All right, welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into Chapter 7, Property and Evidence Documentation. Now, I want you to adopt the mindset of a strict field training officer for this one, because we're looking at the absolute backbone of law enforcement casework. Look, out on the street, you can do brilliant police work, run down leads all day and make the perfect apprehension. But if your documentation and your evidence handling are sloppy, none of it matters. So today, we're getting into the strict, real-world procedures used to collect, package, and track literally everything you seize.
Picture this. You're staring at a key piece of evidence, let's say a recovered firearm, but the evidence tag attached to it is an absolute mess. The handwriting is totally illegible, the date is wrong, and crucial details, like the serial number, are just completely missing. So I have to ask you, would this evidence hold up in court? The hard truth is, absolutely not. No way. A missing serial number or an incomplete tag means you can't definitively prove this is the exact weapon you found at the scene. Just like that, your case gets thrown out.
So, to make sure that never happens on your watch, here's our strict procedural roadmap for today. We're covering 1. Property versus evidence. 2. The chain of custody. 3. Packaging and labeling. 4. Handling specific evidence types. 5. Booking forms and storage. And finally, 6. Courtroom presentation and credibility. Let's get to it.
Starting right off with Section 1, Property versus Evidence.
Before we even think about documentation, we've got to get our baseline terminology straight so we know exactly what we're handling in the field. The line here is actually really clear. Property basically means items held for safekeeping or found items. There's nothing inherently criminal about it. Evidence, on the other hand, those are items directly linked to a crime. It is the physical proof of a criminal act. You've got to categorize these correctly from the literal second they hit your hands.
Let's look at the practical difference here. On one hand, say a citizen flags you down and hands you a found wallet. You're logging that for safekeeping so the owner can get it back. That requires a property report, sure, but the stakes are pretty administrative. But on the other hand, what if you recover a stolen firearm during a felony traffic stop? Boom, that's evidence. The way you categorize it dictates how rigorously you document it. That firearm needs a pristine, airtight documentation trail, or guess what? A violent offender walks right out the door.
All right, moving on to Section 2, the chain of custody.
Look, if you take away absolutely nothing else from this explainer, please let it be this. The chain of custody is the absolute bedrock of case integrity. It's literally the chronological tracking of who had what and exactly when they had it. Take a moment and really think about this question. Why is chain of custody so incredibly important? Think about how just one tiny, unexplained gap in your timeline can totally nuke the credibility of a key piece of evidence. If you can't prove exactly where an item was and who is watching it for every single second since it was seized, its integrity is gone. Poof.
Let's track a stolen firearm's physical journey to see how this actually works. Hour 0, scene recovery. You seize the weapon. Hour 1, it's secured in the trunk of your patrol vehicle. Hour 3, it's logged into a temporary booking locker. Day 2, it goes off to crime lab processing. Month 6, it's sitting there as a courtroom exhibit. Here's the deal. Documentation has to exist at every single one of these transfer points. If the lab tech can't prove who handed them the gun, or you can't prove who had the key to that booking locker, man, the chain is broken.
Check out this contrast. On one side, you have a textbook-perfect continuous custody log with all officer signatures, which builds a totally bulletproof case. But the alternative? A broken chain with an unexplained 48-hour gap. Where was the evidence for those 2 days? Who had access to it? Let me tell you, a defense attorney will zero in on that gap, suggest the evidence was tampered with, and get it suppressed in a heartbeat.
Okay, jumping into Section 3, Packaging and Labeling.
Now, documentation isn't just about paperwork, right? It goes hand in hand with how you physically handle, secure, and preserve these items. Which brings up another huge question. What happens if evidence is improperly packaged? Well, sloppy physical packaging doesn't just look unprofessional, it has disastrous real-world consequences. We're talking cross-contamination, rapid degradation, and total destruction of forensic value.
And here is a catastrophic yet super common mistake. Biological evidence, like a bloodstained shirt, absolutely has to go into a breathable paper bag to allow for airflow. If you toss that same bloody shirt into a sealed plastic bag, the moisture gets trapped. Within hours, you're going to have bacteria and mold growing all over it, rotting the fabric and completely destroying the DNA evidence. Improper packaging literally kills your case.
Once you've got it packaged correctly, it's got to be labeled flawlessly. Think of this as your mandatory, non-negotiable checklist for every single evidence tag and barcode. You need the case number,
date and time of seizure, and the collecting officer's ID. You need an exact item description, including serial and model numbers, and obviously, custody transfer signatures. Every single field matters. If you leave just one blank, you're basically leaving the front door wide open for reasonable doubt. Let's shift gears to Section 4, handling specific evidence types. Because a bloody shirt obviously requires different handling than, say, a bag of pills or a smartphone. Different categories of contraband demand specialized protocols. Let's look at booking narcotics, for example. It is a highly scrutinized process. Step 1, photograph the drugs exactly where you found them. Step 2, weigh them and do your field test on camera or with a witness. Step 3, secure those narcotics in tamper-evident, heat-sealed bags. Step 4, log them immediately into a secure temporary locker. Sticking to this exact chronological order maintains strict accountability and shuts down any accusations of officer theft or tampering right out of the gate.
Then we have the uniquely modern headache of digital evidence. The golden rule here, always secure cell phones to prevent remote wiping. When you seize electronics, you're literally in a race against time. Suspects absolutely can and will send remote wipe commands to their phones the second they're in cuffs. You have to isolate that device from cellular and Wi-Fi networks immediately. Usually, that means dropping it straight into a signal-blocking Faraday bag to lock down its digital integrity.
All right, Section 5, booking forms and storage.
So, moving from the physical packaging into the bureaucratic reality of this job, let's talk submission forms, property receipts, and final disposition. I want to test your attention to detail for a second. Take a look at this vaguely written property report entry. What details are missing here? Because if you submit a report that just says, "one gun," an investigator or your sergeant is going to kick it right back to you. You've got to catch these critical errors yourself.
And here's exactly why. Writing one silver gun is completely unacceptable. There are millions of silver guns out there. Now, compare that to a proper detailed standard. Glock 19, 9mm, silver slide, serial number XYZ123, loaded with 10 rounds. See the difference? That level of extreme detail, especially nailing down that exact serial number, is absolutely vital. It definitively identifies the specific weapon you recovered, separating it from every other firearm on the planet. To keep that integrity intact behind the scenes, you absolutely must follow strict transfer protocols. You've got to verify whether an item needs temporary or permanent storage the second you book it. You need to log all property receipts given to citizens. Make sure you fully complete those evidence submission forms for the crime lab. Keep up those chronological timelines we talked about, and meticulously note every single transfer between patrol officers, detectives, and the booking system. No exceptions. Finally, we arrive at Section 6, courtroom presentation and credibility. Look, everything we've talked about today, the tags, the packaging, the hyper-specific logs, it all culminates right here. Standing in front of a judge and jury is the ultimate test of your documentation. So ask yourself this final question. How could a defense attorney challenge this evidence? The reality of the courtroom is that opposing counsel rarely attacks the physical item itself. They attack you. They attack the officer's handling of it, and they attack the documentation. They are hunting for a smudge date, a missing signature, or some vague description to cast doubt on your competence and, by extension, the entire investigation. It's a hard truth, but even the strongest cases can fail because of poor evidence handling. You could have a full confession, a dozen eyewitnesses, and crystal clear video footage. But if you toss a bloody shirt into a plastic bag, or you fail to properly log the murder weapon, that evidence is getting thrown out. Your case's credibility depends entirely on your precision, your documentation, and your strict, unwavering adherence to protocol.
And that wraps up our explainer on property and evidence documentation. Master these basics, protect your chain of custody, and your cases will be bulletproof. Up next, we're transitioning into the next critical phase of your report writing training, supplemental and specialized reports for ongoing investigations. As you head into that, think about how the evidence you just learned to log perfectly becomes the foundational bedrock for those long-term case files. Catch you in the next one.